Tulou le atua e ana le aso. Tulou tangata o le vanua. Lau fionga tuisuva. Malmamalu o le vanua. Tulou launga na ami. Tulou le mamalu o le tātou o fia o potu ni aso tulou. The reason why I say tulou is that because I'm not standing here just an individual person. I'm standing here as a village. Therefore, a village greeting a village in the sense of tulou. We have a Samoan concept called maotatau ave, a carried home, a carried house. So wherever we go, we carry our house. And therefore, I speak from that house this morning. Ma lor so I manuia, nakavalevu, and pulivinaka. Talofa lava to each and every one of you. It's really amazing to see everyone, not only my dear friend Tuisuva, who is here, but also each and every one of you, and of course, my wonderful colleagues who are speakers not only from yesterday, but also throughout the 3 days of the conversation that we have. I've slightly revised my paper this morning based on the conversation yesterday, and this is what fluidity is all about. Is all about the fluid of the moana that we live in. I'll tell a story. My paper is a story. It's a story about myself and my village and my people. But before I tell that story, I also want to say something about PTC, Pacific Theological College, which is famously known as PTC. For those of you who do not know PTC, it was founded in 1961 by the Pacific churches in the first ever meeting of Pacific churches that was held in Samoa. And then in 1965, of course, the people of the Vanua granted us and gave us the land that we have occupied right now, in which PTC is now located on, in its current location, 1965. It was the first regional degree offering institution. 1966, we started our bachelor, and then in 1968, we had our first graduation. That was also the year that USB started, in 1968. And this is the regional organization, regional educational institution of the Pacific churches, in which we work at the moment with my staff and with my students, with our students. The theme for us this morning is Tofa Taofiofi, the wisdom of restraint in Samoan relational perspective. Let me start with situating my story. So if you have a look at the map of Samoa upstairs, I come from the island of Vaai. And I know there's a connection between Vaai and Hawaii. Probably Professor John Osorio will share the story of that mutual connection of Vaai and Hawaii. But I come from the very tip on the left-hand side of the island of Vaai. That is where I grew up in my life. I grew up in the land called Lepale, which belonged to my family. It's more than 700-acre land, but Lepale means to rest Pale means to rest. It is the resting place of spirits before they go to the underworld of Pulotu. So the next village to us, called Falealupo, or Tofa Taofiofi, it has the Fafao Sawali, the entrance that the spirits use to enter the underworld. And this is our traditional stories that we carry on that links our village to the next village, which has the Fafao Sawali, which has the entrance of the spirits. When they die, the spirits will journey to enter the underworld. Not the afterworld, the underworld. When the missionaries came, they called it the afterworld. But in our culture, it's the underworld, because the underworld is dominated by water. And the spirits, that's why the portals are also watery. It's liquid, it's ocean, it's water, because it makes it easier for the spirits to travel to the underworld. So there's a sense of connection to two worlds, my own connection, not only to the upper world in which we live, but also the other dimension beyond that, which is the underworld. And both worlds are sort of mutually interconnected and mutually linked to each other in our daily activities. That's why when we have stories back in the village, we always point to the spirits of ancestors, or we point to the mana, we point to a sense of space where spirits are dwelling, because there has that link between the upper world and the underworld. So I grew up in a cocoa farm, and of course the many oranges, and we had to sell them in the market, but it still carry on at the moment where with my family, Lepale. Tofa Taofiofi, the wisdom of restraint. According to Tuiatua, the Tofa Taofiofi, or the wisdom of restraint, is one of those easy to talk about, but hard to do principles. Knowing not only when to restrain oneself from doing something or saying something, but also how to restrain oneself assumes many things. End of quote. Tuiatua is the former head of state of Samoa, and one of the great philosophers of the Pacific from Samoa. Tofa Taofiofi. Tofa is wisdom. It can also mean sleep, but that is the meditative sleep of the chiefs, or meditative sleep of all of us. And Taofiofi comes from the root word taofi, meaning to stop, to restrain, to control, to contain, to limit, to wait. And these are the dynamics of Tofa Taofiofi. There is a story that I want to tell, because this is a story where perhaps the Tofa Taofiofi, or the wisdom of restraint, is actually explained very well. It's a story of Wa'au and Bo, day and night. And according to Samoan mythologies, Au and Bo, or day and night, are mythological husbands and wives. Unlike Greek philosophy, where one has to kill the other in order to exist, so night has to kill day in order to exist, or day has to kill night, or exclude, or terminate night in order to exist. In Samoan mythology, Au and Bo, day and night, are mythological husbands and wife. They are mutually interconnected. So today we have day, for example. And because we have day, the role of night, or po, is to retreat to its minimum proportion in order for night in order for day to exist. And the same thing, when it comes night, it means that day has retreated to its minimum proportion in order for night to exist. So that giving way to each other, that sense of control and restraining, that sense of decreasing and waiting while the other exists, is at the very heart of the wisdom of restraint, Taofiofi. Because if both night and day will exist at the same time, of course there would be clash of the two. And therefore the marriage will end up destroyed. So that's why we have our traditional stories where Ao and Po, or day and night, are mythological husbands and wives, not really enemies, as per Greek philosophy. These are the values of restraint. Values of restraint are taught from when we were young. We have to know what to speak. What is the content? Know first what to speak. We have to know when to speak it, the importance of time. And then we have to know where to speak it, the importance of place and space. And then we have to know how to speak it, the importance of method and approach. These four values are very important and key to Tofa Taofiofi, or the wisdom of restraint. Therefore, as young people, and I grew up, my family, my father was high chief himself, so they had to teach us children, on how to behave. You have to know what you're going to speak about. You don't just speak of anything. You have to learn what to speak, and then where to speak it. You don't just stand up and speak where the elders are. You have to know where and when to speak, and then where to speak it, probably at the place, and then know how to. And the last one is very critical, because we might know everything, but we do not know what is the approach to use on how to speak something. Tofa Taofiofi is about mastering this H3W formula. 3 W's and 1 H. The H3W formula. You have to know what, when, where, and how to speak it. And at the heart of Tofa Taofiofi. Restraint in Samoa is about self-discipline. And this is at the heart of Samoan wisdom. Because many of us, we might know a lot of things, but it comes down to self-discipline. And that self-discipline, of course, comes with a sasa. Many of us will experience a sasa from the mother. We'll always have that sasa on our back or whatever, because it comes with the idea that you have to discipline yourself on how to speak, when to speak, what to speak, and how to speak it. And these are all ethics of life. So it is not about what you know, but rather how much you know, how to control what you know. That sense of control. But this can also be abused by communities. It has been abused and continues to be abused by elders, by village leaders, by communities, by many of us, especially the sense of the silencing of ourselves, the retreating of ourselves, not to say anything. It might be taken by others as not knowing anything, or it might be used by others just to suppress that person not speaking. So this is where good leadership comes in, because these qualities of the wisdom of restraint, or the ethics of restraint, is all about good leadership. The following are proverbs that normally apply to a person without the wisdom of restraint, meaning without the wisdom of restraint. Pei o le waa ua ngoto i le mamafa upu, like a canoe that sinks from the weight of words. That's how people, elders, see those who have a lot to speak and talk about, but it sinks the canoe from the weight of the words without any actions. Pei o le waa le eisona la, pei o le fale le eisona ano fale, like a canoe without a sail, like a house without a purpose. Is how they view a person without the wisdom of restraint. O se o ta lima lava e pa ia ai se o ta mata, my own finger will wound my own eye. Because the more I say something, the more I speak about something, without control, without constraint, it can come back and hurt me. And that is the meaning of that proverb. Wa'anu ilangi le launga, the speech spits against the heavens. And then normally they use that in oratory, especially when someone speaks without the wisdom, without restraint, without peace, that has aggressiveness. So it has that sense of anu ilangi, spitting against the heavens. And then the last one, e manatua pule aile manatua fa'aleo. Clemency will be remembered, but not destruction. So if you see that there are proverbs that surround the wisdom of restraint, which is different from the Western definition of restraint, means to tie or to limit something or to suppress something. But restraint is really to really wait. We wait. And in particular, it also refers to research. When some of us researchers, we go to the village. When we go to the village, we try to ask a lot of questions. And if we don't have the answer to those questions, we become agitated. But sometimes we get the view wrong, because sometimes knowledge cannot be given as such. You have to wait for knowledge. Wait until they trust you to give you as a custodian of that knowledge. Wisdom of restraint cautions us against pride, especially the pride of the tongue when we speak. Tongue in Samoa is lau faiva. Lau is to distribute, and faiva is catch. Tongue means to catch, to distribute a catch. So lau faiva is symbolic of a distributive system rather than a digestive system, to serve and maintain relationships, but not to hurt relationships. So everything, even in our bodies, they all point to this idea of achieving wisdom and serving relationships. And I see here, I sense here that I put here the picture of one of the village in last year of one of their fish, because annually they have their fish called the atule in American Samoa. So they fish together, they share together, and they eat together as a community. Tofa Taofiofi is about the ability to maintain four harmonies according to Tuiatua. The harmony between the self and oneself. You have to discipline yourself to know how to speak, to know how to walk, to know how to sit. Harmony between the self and others. You have to know how to relate, what kind of language that we need to use in order to relate. What are the protocols that we use? What are the things that we need to share in our village in order for us to exist together? Harmony between the self and fanua and vanua. What is that harmony? You all know that harmony. I think we listened yesterday of the importance of that harmony with the fanua. and then the harmony between the self and God. The three first harmonies all lead to the harmony between the self and God. Because, and this is why, because if you are able to have harmony with yourself, to have harmony with the others, and to have harmony with the fanua, that is the direction to have harmony with God. It all points to the harmony of God. So sometimes we go to worship, we go on Sunday, and we worship a lot, we cry in the church, we sing and whatever. But if we don't have the harmony with ourselves, and a harmony with the others, and a harmony with vanua, then I think you're wasting your time to worship. Because you need those three harmonies to achieve the last harmony, the harmony of the self and God. And that is a more holistic way of looking at Christianity. There are three principles of Tofa Taofiofi, or the wisdom of, in Samoan perspective. This is the whole story. I'm just telling it because I grew up in it. One is sao, silence, and I think you already listened to it because I think Professor Una was talking about it. She wrote about it. What is it called again? Vakatabu, yeah. Taxonomy of silence, but we call it sao in Samoa. No? Silence. Sometimes in our education system, we teach our children, we teach everyone to speak every time. And the more they speak, the more the teachers say, oh, you're smart. The more they talk in class, they say, you're smart. And then you're given that award or that star or that sticker, and then a certificate. Oh, your son or your daughter has been speaking in classes and been really good. I wonder if that is the way we teach our children. If we are missing something when it comes to silence. When you attend a conference, for example, and I experience this a lot in organizing conferences from PTC's perspective, that sometimes those who are very vocal, they always want to force those who sit at the back, who don't speak, to speak up. But sometimes it's not as easy as that, and it's not as straightforward as that. Probably that person is struggling with the issue at hand discussed, or probably that person is having a conversation with himself, with God, with others, or probably there's an issue. So there's a complexity involved in a person that is in silence. So we have to understand the dynamics and the politics of silence. And then fa'aloalo, one of the key principles of Samoa, face-to-face reciprocity. I think Professor Jonathan Osorio captured it very well in his paper yesterday, the importance of reciprocity, which is, he said, is at the heart of our resilience. Because if you don't have something, the neighbor, the tuaoi, which I will talk about, is actually the one that will come to save. And then the third one is tuaoi. So I'll just talk about the last one, because the last one I think is very important. Tuaoi, we have tuaoi fanua, the land boundaries, tuaoi tangata, human boundaries. We have tuaoi upu, language boundaries, and we have tuaoi to'oto'o, oratory boundaries. I'm not sure, when I heard the ceremony yesterday and how the orators were speaking, I can't assume, but I'm just wondering, okay, probably that's the boundaries they are creating in order to honor the chief guest. Those are the tuaoi. But the reason why I want to talk about tuaoi and boundaries is because I want to address some of the issues. So I just bring one of those issues, which is ayata taua, human rights. Because that is one of the issues that we really need to redefine in our communities. What is human rights? Because many of us are given the definition by the United Nations about human rights, which is of course adopted by our governments. But what is human rights to us? What is rights? So this is, I've just shared the definition that Samoa has. Samoa, in the translation of human rights, they call it aya tatau. Aya is rights, but every aya have a tuaoi or boundary. Next to the word aya is tatau. Aya tatau. Tatau is the key word that makes aya suitable, applicable, and appropriate. So you might have a right, but tatau is a key word that will tell you, is your right applicable? Is it suitable? Is it appropriate to the time and space? Again, it goes back to the wisdom of restraint. There's a Samoan saying, the wisdom of the fool is fixed, while the wisdom of the wise is negotiable. And one of the things that we need to talk about is how can we redefine these concepts? For example, human rights, gender equality, all the concepts which are important concepts. When our last 2 weeks, Pacific Theological College was holding a philosophy's course, which was attended by many policymakers and others around the region. And one of the key areas that we had a look at is really to redefine some of these policies. Human rights, gender equality. How can we redefine them from a relational, holistic, whole-of-life perspective that is communities-based? And these are some of the challenges that we all have. Because sometimes human rights can be individualistic. But we have rights, but we term it differently. Sometimes we call it responsibility. But there is a huge thing that needs to be done when it comes to redefining human rights. What does it mean by human rights? What does it serve? What are the foundational principles? And in whose terms we define rights? So I come back to the notion of time in Samoa. I think Dr. Faftai was talking about time. But we all know that time, we didn't have the clock or the watch before, but we time ourselves according to the side of the sun, the shadows. So itula, that is the name for an hour for us in Samoa. Itula, or hour, means the side of the sun. So in the whole idea of Tofa Taofiofi, or the wisdom of restraint, life revolves around the sun. The human activities revolve around the earth, not the other way around. Because the other way around is that the earth revolves around human economy, human interest, human agenda. But it is the other way around, that human activities revolve around the earth. So we negotiate because we only live according to what is made available to us. So what we have in the villages is what is available to us. The land that we have, that's what is available to us. The food that we have. When I went to Nalase and experienced Nalase in the last time and Vunisinu, and they had to go and get mud crabs from another island, and they had to ask for permission to do that, because it's the only thing that is available to them. But they still call it a blessing, because it's all part of what is available to us, made available to us. And this is why we don't rush time. We don't rush into decision making. We don't rush into production for the sake of profit. Just because what is available to us, we see it as a gift of God to us. Even though we don't have a lot of things, we don't have big houses, we don't have huge stores, we don't have a lot of things, but what is available to us, in front of us, we always see it as a blessing, and that's why we don't rush time. So in Samoa, the past is called tuanai, and the future is called Lumā. So tuanai for us is the past. The word tua means past, but the word nai means towards. So it's a past that moves towards the present. And Lumā is the future that moves towards the present. So the past and the future meets in the present. And that's how we see time, where tuanai and Lumā meet in the present, in Leaso. And the present we call Leaso. It is the meeting place of the past and future. That is why in Samoa, for example, and probably most of the communities, we are present-oriented communities. We live for the now. We don't rush things and cut down trees and extract things from the ocean to build and invest in the future. Because most of us, when we talk investments, we talk about building investments in the future at the expense of the present. But we must live in the present on what is available to us. And our notion and our philosophy of time has told us that we cannot have a future if we do not have a present. We need to live in the present. So time moves as a whole. It doesn't move in a kind of a linear way that other cultures, from the past and the present and the future. So the past really is not really important. It's just memory. But we don't see it like that. Time moves as a whole. Time moves together. The past and the future moves with the present. So the practice of wisdom of restraint is seen through the process of moe le toa, meaning let the toa sleep. So in a long time ago, toa is I'm not sure, you have the toa, the tree, one of the very solid tree that we use for building and carving weapons of mass destruction. So in order for the weapon to really be hardened, it has to be in the water for a long period of time. So they said, moe le toa, meaning let the toa sleeps in the water until it is hardened and heavy for war. And that metaphor has been used for decision making. If we sit down as a village council and we decide on a very important aspect of decision making, if we don't have consensus, we say moe le toa. Let the toa sleeps. Tomorrow we come back and decide again. We don't rush into decision making, and we don't vote for decision making. Might take time. That's why it's very uncomfortable many times, because it takes a lot of time for relationships to be affirmed and for a single life not to be left behind. If we are serious about the United Nations theme of no one left behind, then we have to look at this, because let the toa sleeps is very important. We respect passivity and inactivity. We respect death, decay, less degrees as part of life. And of course, the capitalist system hates this. They hate degrees. They hate less, because there's no profit if the thing decreases. Less profit, less production, degrees in profit is not the language of the philosophy of growth of the neo-capitalist system. But we have it in us. We have to respect inactivity or passivity in order for that to grow. Growth emerges from inactivity, from less and degrees. And that is the opposite of how we think. So God slows down. For those of you who are questioning where God is also slowing down to respect death and decay as well. You can read the story of Jesus Christ, the whole sense of slowness of God through Jesus. God slows down to the pace of the vanua and the pace of the people for the sake of liberation. So this should shape our development policies, whatever policies that we have. It should shape the way we think. So the previous topic that I talked about is pointers of an aging land. So this is the Tofa Taofiofi, or the wisdom of restraint, also applies to how we limit ourselves and limit our power when it comes to usage of the land. So for example, when we see the Vakatabu or the vow to anew, you can see it there, grows wild, those are the pointers that it is the land is aging and we need to give it a rest. Meaning like grass on the wayside, applies to a person who talks a lot but no action. Even the land dies from his or her words. When leaves of taro start drying, it means the land is aging. When the stem of taro starts rotting after 2 months of planting, it means the land is aging. These are pointers that point us to an aging land. Therefore, it requires application of restraint. And what we do is a sabbatical shift. So we speak about the Sabbath in the Bible. That is how the Israelites practice how to look after the land. But we all have our own sabbatical processes before Christianity came. We all had our own. So for example, land must rest. So we moved to another area while growing what we call the ngatai. I'm not sure what Fiji calls it, this tree, ngatai. Because the leaves of the ngatai will recuperate and resuscitate the land. So we leave the land for 2-3 years, we move to another space, we come back and use that land again. That is the sabbatical process that the Bible is talking about. And we all practice that process in the village. So Sabbath in the Bible is not as different from how our forebears have done it. Like for example, fasao. We in Samoa, we still have this fasao. In Samoan language, fasao is literally translated to make way. It refers to a section of the lagoon left untouched for months or years to make way for the natural process of growth and regeneration. It also refers to shifting the plantation to another area while leaving the land vacant to make way for regeneration. This is not the same as the idea of reserve as in the West. Fasao means that such land or section of the ocean can be accessed and used again when it reaches its maximum growth or its maximum proportion. This is why the Western idea of the tabu is different from the Samoan tabu or the island tabu. Because in tabu, for example, for us, we tabu for a certain period of time, but we come back and access it through our protocols and rituals. The Fasao regenerative economic system has the idea of slowing down for the natural process of healing to take place. It is part of the cycle of life and time, where the best solutions come from respecting death, decay, inactivity, passivity, and so forth. Fasao is still practiced by most, if not all, villages in Samoa, and it is also factored into the national conservational programs. So my last slide is this. If we want all of this, the wisdom of restraint, if we want this to happen and educate our children, our people, our vanua, then we need a transformative education. From an educator's perspective, to transform and change things, we need a different language of education. We need a different system of education that perhaps embraces the four harmonies of the self, the other, the land, and God. This is called the whole of life education. Education can be poisonous. If we go and read the Numbers 21, where the Israelites were bitten by poisonous snakes, and then God told Moses to build a bronze snake and put it up. Whoever looks at it will be saved. The same thing with here. The very tool that was used to poison and to colonize us is also the same tool we can use to liberate us, and that is education. These are the challenges if we need a transformative education. We need the government support. We need a community-based curriculum. We need to change our accreditation frameworks. We need a community-based research criteria, and I'm really glad that some of our speakers here, and most of our speakers here, are really good in explaining what a community-based research is. And we need a community-based educational standards, because we don't have our own standards based on our own whole of life, values and philosophies. So that's where I come to Pacific Theological College. We are moving towards a transformative education based on a whole of life vision. And there are four principles of this vision. One, the whole of life relational values and spiritualities. We have to teach our people of our relational values and spiritualities as foundational. Second is Pacifica household defined in our own terms, not in someone else's terms, but we define it ourselves through our own values and spiritualities. A community-based learning approach. One of the purposes of this Vakatabu conference, and I think most of you who are here from the villages, when my team visited the communities, we published a report of the consultations with many of your communities. And I know many of you were part of this consultation. And in that report, that very report really explains that we need many of the suggestions and the recommendations that you did to our team recommended a change in education. And we are moving towards changing it based on the many of the recommendations from you. But also one of the things that we are developing is that we are bringing communities back to education. That is why the importance of our partnership. PTC, and I know also with other institutions, we are creating this partnership now. So for example, when I say we need to redefine our accreditation frameworks, is that accreditation needs to recognize the wisdom of our elders as lecturers and teachers and mentors for the university. Because some of us who work in universities, who are professors, who are called professors, sometimes when we attend a climate change conference, one or two, or a training, and all of a sudden we call ourselves experts. But we have experts in the community who know what climate change is, who know what adaptation is, who know what we need to do when the land ages. And this is the knowledge that we need to bring back. So the whole idea is that for the university and for you in part of the communities to work together to mentor the future generation. That is why we've invited most of you here, because you will be part of this movement, and you will be part of this journey. So this is not just another conference where you come and sit down and listen to us and then you go. This is part of our journeying together to build a new transformative education, where village communities are very much part of our educational system and learning system. And that is the community-based learning. Because we need to send our students to you, to teach them to what to do with the land, and not drinking cover the whole night, but what to do, what is the wisdom there in the villages? And we are working on that, on that approach at the moment. It's called a community-based learning approach with accreditation frameworks at the moment. And then, of course, self-determination. We need to be free. We need to determine our own future, not only politically, but also educationally. And this is how it looks like from next year. Next year, we are launching the Pacifica Communities University, the home of whole of life learning, where PTC will become the Pacifica Communities University, where you, the villages, will be part of the university. You see that the name is there, the word communities is there, because it will no longer be just another university. It must be a university of the communities, that we learn from the values of the communities, from the wisdom of the communities, from how you read time, from how you do things, and how you teach, and also relay the learning and convey the learning to all of you. So we will invite you again, not only this time, many times you will be part of our transformative educational journey. Venakavalevu.